food is life. And I think, in the last 2 years, we've all gone through a lot of ups and a lot of downs. But, it all comes back to sharing that moment. I love watching people bite into it and their eyes roll into the back of their head. That's what gives me a buzz.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. There are few things we love better than a sandwich, whether it's a classic sausage sanger, banh mi, or a lamb kebab. Italy's influence in Australia is renowned, and they too have many classic sandwiches, none more influential than a simple panini. Dom Ruggeri is the owner of Dom Panino. Dom, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Good. It's good to have you on the show. I'm a very big fan of sandwiches, especially paninis. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's an absolute honour to be on your show. What we're doing at Dom Panino, just simply great, honest Italian sandwiches. I think we're not overcomplicating things, but we're sticking to fresh, amazing ingredients in beautiful Italian bread. Simply put.
Well, we see this sort of thing in different cafes, but one dedicated to it. Is it something that you've seen before in Australia?
I can't say I have. Well, not in Sydney anyway. I've been to Melbourne a couple of times, and you've definitely got some paninotecas down there. I think, like everything, they're sort of the pioneers in the food scene. But in Sydney, I think I can safely say we definitely are the first paninotecca. And the idea came about. I just constantly said to myself, where can I go for a good sandwich that I don't have to make myself, or a panino I don't have to make myself? And more often than not, I mean, look, being Italian, there's amazing delis around the inner west. That's where I grew up. I grew up in Putney. My grandmother lived in Five Docks, so a lot of amazing delis. And you'd always go to the deli and you get, your 100 grams of prosciutto, 100 grams of salami, and you go home and you make it all together and you make a beautiful sandwich. But, that takes time. And if you went to the deli and asked them to make the sandwich for you, they would look at you like you had two heads, because they just didn't want to take the time to actually put all the ingredients in, put the olives, put whatever you wanted. So, the idea really came about because I wanted to make a sandwich quick and easy, but do it for someone else and not necessarily them have to go to the deli and do it. So, that's how the idea sort of came about.
Well, you opened in November 2020 during some tough times for hospitality. What was it like opening in that period of time?
A lot of resistance from my family and friends. They thought I was pretty crazy, but it came out of necessity, to be honest. My background was always been in the music industry. I spent 10 years in Ibiza, living and working over there with in the electronic music business. And when I came back 3.5 years ago, I got into it here, but then obviously the pandemic hit and COVID was around, and I was looking around. I was thinking to myself, what can I do, and what's my future hold? Because the music industry, it had another year or two before it even came back, and if we look at it now, it's still not where it should be. So it was out of necessity that I started Dom Panino, and food's always been my passion along with music, and I wanted to get into something and also be safe at the same time, because so much volatility of what was happening. And my idea was Dom Panino because, everyone was shifting towards the takeaway model, whether it be a restaurant or a cafe. Everyone was doing was takeaway. So, I started the idea, and we're operating out of a food truck at the moment, but we're permanently based where we are. And the whole concept of it was, let's start small out of the food truck, see if there's an appetite for just panini, just sandwiches. And we're still going today. So it's been difficult. It's had its challenges, not only the pandemic challenges, but, challenges as a new business. You have that beautiful moment where you're hot and everyone wants to come and see you. And that was sustained for quite a while. And then, boom, we had another lockdown. When was it? Was it June, July? So last year, which was interesting because, being a suburban location, we got busier, and it was amazing because the honeymoon period kept going. So we had a great couple months during lockdown because the 5 month radius, sorry, 5 kilometer radius really helped us, and we were absolutely loving it. And it was a great way to build the business and get the locals really, what's the word I'm going for? Like really loving what we're doing and trying it out more than that, just that once when you do have that new business. So you sort of have people that come once and they'll come again another 6 months later. So we really built a great base, and it was a really beautiful time. And then I'd say that the challenges from that was that once everything did open up again, a lot of the takeaway businesses and cafes that were doing well in the suburbs weren't as busy because all the restaurants had opened in the city, and people started to see their friends, and nightlife came back. So yeah, there's been the ups and downs of starting the business in the pandemic, having the positives of the lockdown, and then the negatives of once everything did open up again, we had to really adjust to how we have patterns of people, and to the point now we're trying to work out where is everyone and what is the normal flow of people. So I think it's just settling back out now, where we have a bit of consistency of knowing where people are.
What surprised you about running a hospitality venue?
What surprised me? Not a lot in terms of running it, because my history in hospo is I've always sort of been around it. I started working at a very young age at my uncle's pizzeria when I was 11. I worked in cafes all my teenage years and even managed one when I was 17. So I didn't have a lot of so I've had a bit of experience running these cafes before and hospitality business. So I think the shocking part now is and the surprising part is finding people's patterns and seeing that things have sort of changed post-COVID. I don't feel like everyone has that expenditure anymore just to go out and buy something every day. So I think dealing with that in the sense that the hospitality landscape has changed significantly.
I want to explore what you're doing with Dom Panino in a sec, but take us back to when you were young. What sort of role did food play in your family?
Like every Italian family, it's the central focus of everything we do. I think if you're an Italian kid, you wake up and you want to know what you're having for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Mum's an amazing cook. Nonna is incredible. So yeah, food's always been a part of our family. My nonno on my mum's side was a professional fisherman in Sydney. So we had a big trawler boat, and we grew up around seafood all our life. So, he'd come back at 7 a.m. with a huge haul of fresh fish. And you'd have my nonna in the kitchen. She'd be cleaning up the prawns, and you'd have a beautiful lunch on a Sunday with amazing seafood fresh from his boat, which was always a beautiful experience. So, yeah, we've always been with food, it's a central focus of everyone coming together and enjoying a beautiful meal. Being Sicilian background, a lot of the food we eat is Sicilian. So a lot of the food we eat is seafood and fresh and of the season. That's what I also bring back to my childhood, is like we never eat the same thing all year round. It always varies from season to season from what's available.
You had a career that took you all over the globe doing all sorts of things in music. Do you have any stories of those trips overseas and the influence that food of different cultures had on you?
I was in event management and I managed a couple of DJs. So I was probably the only person that made a career coming out of it not being a DJ. But my experience with that was I moved to Ibiza when I was 19, and I got lucky to be a tour manager for a big Aussie DJ called Sarah Main, and she was the resident DJ for Pasha at the time. And that was when the explosion of the EDM scene per se was happening. So she used to warm up for the Swedish House Mafia, David Guetta, Eric Murillo, huge electronic acts. So I was, this 20-year-old kid over there, in the DJ booth with all these superstars and just saw the explosion of the whole scene. And from that, we did quite a bit of touring on a weekly basis. So, we'd be all over Europe in different countries. And I think that's how the love of food just exploded even more for me, that, you'd be in Spain one day, Italy the next, you'd be in the UK, Germany, wherever it was, you'd be able to try the local cuisine, because the touring's, it's amazing, but you literally go from airport to the hotel, to the restaurant, to the club, and then you're back out of there. So the one thing you'd savor was always having a beautiful meal and trying the local delicacies. But yeah, living in Ibiza was just incredible. It's a very cosmopolitan island, and I'd say it's like the melting pot of all the cultures around Europe. And you'd have the best restaurants from every country represented in Ibiza. So, any night of the week you could go and have an amazing meal from any cuisine. And I think that was just pivotal to also me wanting to own my own food business, is that, you could see the passion from all around Europe, all in one location at Ibiza. And I just thought to myself, one day I'd always love to have my own slice where I can, show the food that I love. And I think, I've taken a bit of everything from different locations, and in some of my sandwiches that we do, we have that influence. And like our latest creation is called the chorizo smash, and that's heavily Spanish influenced with that creation. So yeah.
Are there any skills or lessons learnt from your time in the music industry that you've transferred into what you're doing now?
Great question. Actually, I made a career of making people dance through putting on events and looking after these DJs and then performing. And, seeing people happy through dance is a lot of the inspiration. That now what I do is, instead of making people happy through dancing, I'm making them happy through my food. And when you run an events or you're marketing a DJ, there's a lot of ways that you can bring that into the food business, and that's sort of what I've done as well. If you see a lot of our marketing, all our panini, they've actually got their own logo, much like a DJ. So it's just giving them a bit of their own variety, their own space to sing on a flyer on a menu or online or on social. So yeah, all our panini have their own logos. We heavily focus on promo clips. So every special we do, there's a new video, and clever editing or quick cutting, and I put music over the background. I just feel like a lot of my time in the music business has just transferred into how I market Dom Panino. And I think, we do stand out a little bit from the crowd. And, more often than not, when someone comes to the counter and they're not even looking at the menu, they've got their phone out, and they're just showing me the video of me making the sandwich. Like, you sort of have that little bit of a celebrity status that we saw you make this and we had to eat it. So, yeah, I guess there's a correlation between, marketing a DJ and marketing a sandwich or a nightclub and a restaurant. Essentially, you want to put, bums on seats, or you want to put, ticket sales. So, yeah, there's been a lot of cross-pollination with the industries that I've sort of tried to take into the food industry.
You've got many different sandwiches and paninis. What's some that you can tell us about that do really well?
Well, our signature one is called Nonna's Nostalgia, and this is purely a sandwich panino that it was an idea to bring my childhood to the menu. So, being Italian, you grow up and on Sundays it's always a family lunch or a family dinner. And you go to your nonna's house and she'd be cooking this amazing sugo or a bolognese, and, you could smell it from the driveway. And as a kid, the first thing you want to do is run inside, and nonna's there, she's cooking, she's stirring the sauce, and you get a piece of fresh bread and you just dip it straight in and you eat it. And that's heaven, and that's like my childhood to a T. So I had to, make homage to that. So our Nonna's Nostalgia is our slow-cooked pork and veal bolognese. We cook it over 5 hours, so it becomes really, really thick. And then what we do is when we actually make the sandwich, we put it back into the pan and we reduce it down for another 5 to 10 minutes so it gets even thicker. That goes on our bread with some smoked fior di latte through it. So you've got that smokiness and then a bit of parmigiano, rocket, and then a bit of olive oil on that. Is just, it's delicious. And it's like everyone's, oh, is it a meatball sub? I said, well, look, it's technically could be a meatball sub, but it really, it's literally bolognese on the roll, which sounds simple, but the complexity is that it's been cooked for so long, then reduced again, and then the smokiness of the fior di latte that goes through it. Yeah, it's just, it's cracker.
You mentioned some of the menu as well as influenced by your travels. What's an example that you can give of that?
Yeah, I think like there's a couple of specials that we've done over time as well. Like I spent quite a bit of time traveling to LA and New York, and by doing that, I mean I got into the whole love of like the New York style sandwiches. Trying quite a few of those out, and being a massive Sopranos buff, we have a little bit of influence on our menu with sort of some homages to like the, for example, we did the one called the Tony Soprano, which is a prawn cotoletta that we do with a bit of a slaw and Kewpie mayo. So that was like a homage to Tony Soprano. And then, yeah, like the other one we do is called the Joey Vodka, which is just like your typical vodka sauce that everyone does in New Jersey. They love that over there with a spicy sopressata and mozzarella, and then done with the chicken schnitzel coated in all the vodka sauce. So yeah, we sort of have a bit of a American influence, Aussie influence, and then yes, it's a bit of a mix.
Tell us about the bread and how important that is, and what you look for in making a great panino.
Definitely. Well, it took me, I'd say 3 months before I actually wanted to open up Don Panino to actually find the right bread, because I was never going to open up unless I had what I wanted. So I tried 20 different bakeries, and from sourdough to pane di casa to your damper rolls to sliced, and the bread is so important. Like it is the vehicle of the sandwich. And I finally found the right baker, and it was more so just sitting down with him, and I actually spent 2 nights just going through all the bread they make, and actually made the bread with him. And then I realized that what it was a combo of a couple of different ways they do a certain roll, but then how we cook it and how long we cook it for is essentially what we've come up with. So yeah, the bread we have it is a pane di casa, but the way we cook it and the way we do it and the shape it is what makes it special. So it's soft in the inside, but it's got enough crunch that when you bite into it, it doesn't rip the roof of your mouth off, which I think is so important for a sandwich. I'm sure you've had a couple that you get stuck in, and by the end of it, your jaw's sore and you're bleeding on the inside. So none of that at Don Panino. And we never toast the bread. All our bread is fresh every day. I'm just adamant about not toasting next day's bread. It just doesn't work. I mean, I think it's just cutting corners, especially if someone's paying decent money for a sandwich. They want something fresh and delicious. So yeah, we often get comments about how nice the bread is, which is great, because half the job's done if the bread's good.
With a family so passionate about food, what's the response from the family about what you're doing?
Yeah, everyone's super proud. My nonna is like the biggest influence with it, and a lot of the recipes for our menu, like our chicken schnitzel, it's her recipe. The way she cooks it, we do it the same. And she often comes past and she's like, oh, so how are you doing this and how are you making that? I'm like, well, this is how you told me, and this is how I'm doing it now, because some things in a restaurant, you have to do it a bit quicker and you have to do it on bulk. And she just looks at me like, that's not how you do it. What are you talking about? So it's funny. She still keeps us in check. And but yeah, everyone's super proud and excited for the future and what holds for it. Yeah. Like through the pandemic, we've had ups and downs, and everyone's been there to support. So being a family business, and I've got mum there on the weekends with me, which is great. And we do, she comes down on a Saturday and Sunday, and we have they're called sfinci, which is a Sicilian donut. It's flour, water, yeast, and mashed potato, and we lightly fry them, and then they get dusted in cinnamon and sugar, and then we also do them with Nutella toppings, Biscoff, and that's our weekend treat. And yeah, everyone goes crazy for those too. I'm pretty sure we're the first ones in Sydney to be doing sfinci, which is pretty special, and yeah, and very nostalgic as well. We have a lot of old Italians coming in, and they eat it and they start to cry because their wife used to make it and she's not around anymore, or they've tasted it and it reminds them of the old country, which is a beautiful they're beautiful moments to have as well. Recreating dishes that people might not have all the time.
You've also created a range of condiments as well. Tell us a bit about that, and where did the recipes come from?
Yeah, so mostly from Nonna and passed down to Mum. So we do a range. We've got our pickled fennel, which is my favorite. It just got that beautiful crunch to it, and the vinegar that comes through, and we use great extra virgin olive oil. We do our own melanzane, so melanzane, carrots, and the mushrooms. It's all a similar style of how we do it, but it's a labor of love. It's all about getting great fresh produce from the markets, and everything's hand cut, because I find when you hand cut your pickled vegetables, they don't bruise, so you get a beautiful color out of them. And then it's all about aging them and making sure they come out nice and crunchy and crisp when you do them. And I think by doing your own pickled vegetables and putting them in the panini, it just makes them taste that much better. They have that that difference where it doesn't taste bought, it does taste homemade. And that's it's beautiful, like the traditions of pickling and how Italians do it. You literally don't have any wastage in your business. Like whatever's going old, you can just throw some oil and vinegar and pickle it properly. So with that range, we're bit stuck for like the actual space we have to actually sell them at the truck at the moment. But the idea is in future to take that to market and definitely try to get them in households.
You've built a great base and foundation for the business now. What's your plans for the next year?
So yeah, we're just consolidating what we're doing now and in the current location. But yeah, our plans are definitely to have more. Probably later on in the year, we're looking at October, November to open up our next store. Just currently looking for that location, but getting married in August, so we're just going to have to get through that first, and then enjoy that celebration. And because if I wanted to open up already, but I don't think I would have got married if otherwise. So the missus wouldn't have been too happy if we opened up a store before we got married.
You've made this amazing transition through necessity into the food game. What do you love about what you do?
I love people's reactions to eating our food. It just makes your heart sing. There's nothing better than someone actually enjoying it and saying so. And, food is life. And I think, in the last 2 years, we've all gone through a lot of ups and a lot of downs. But, it all comes back to sharing that moment. I love watching people bite into it and their eyes roll into the back of their head. That's what gives me a buzz. It's getting up in the morning and serving that first coffee to your regular. And, it starts their day. You have that conversation, being the barista as well. You're a bit of a counselor to them. You hear people's problems and you see people grow. And, we've been there for a year and a half now. You see little kids growing up. And I think, it all comes down to community. It's beautiful having a community with your location and your venue and your restaurant. Those are beautiful moments in hospitality. And we haven't had a lot of those because of the lockdowns and, social distancing. But all those things are coming back now. And that's a real beautiful, beautiful thing to have. And I hope, that our industry does bounce back better than what it was. And I'm sure it will. It'll just take a bit of time to do that. So yeah, I love the community. I love it. It's a beautiful thing to have that.
Well, Dom, congratulations on what you've built and good luck with the wedding in August and with what you've got ahead of that. Loved having you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear your story. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I love your show. And keep doing what you're doing. Without people like yourself, it all falls down. So it's great that you give everyone a voice, and love your work. Thank you so much.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.